the big issue was, who was Jim? And why did he self-destruct or seem to self-destruct? And nobody had the answer for that. And this became very, very clear to me after a couple of weeks of beginning my research and interviewing. Remember, this is before the internet. This is 1986. There was one biography out on Morrison at that time, and it was Danny Sugarman's, Jerry Hopkins' book, No One Here Gets Out Alive, right, which we did not have the rights to for the project. And I felt that that book was a little too sensationalistic for what I wanted to do. I love history, but I really appreciate scholarship in history. And I'm always suspect of things that are not footnoted and the sources are cited, you know? So, and that book didn't have much of that. So I remember Sasha telling me, he said, just take a couple of weeks to research and then start writing the script. And so after meeting with Rey, I think Rey was like my first interview. And I loved Rey. And he's just, we talked, you know, he was great in terms of, we would just talk about literature and movies and stuff. But he would only go so far in terms about the doors. And so many of the stories and so many of the anecdotes that he communicated to me were things that I had heard already. Okay. So it was very difficult to kind of go beyond a certain point, and became clear to me that Rey didn't know. Okay. Rey knew Jim, but he didn't know Jim. Okay. So it wasn't until later on that Paul Rothchild, that I interviewed Paul Rothchild, who produced all their albums. And Paul was a terrific interview and very insightful. And he was the one that kind of started me on that path, on really digging very, very deeper. So, so once I got onto that path, then it became really more clear about the Lawrence of Arabia analogy, you know, that I saw more and more parallels emerging all the time, which was fascinating to me, you know. And Lawrence was a huge influence on me in terms of movies, because of its epic quality and its quasi-mystical quality, and the sort of the notion of someone with a God complex, you know, all these themes that I found very, very interesting, and how visual it all was. You know, Lawrence was just something that I would aspire to. Now, it was interesting that in real life, T.E. Lawrence was gay, right? And at that time, you know, that was a crime in England, you know. So he had the secret that he had to keep, and they allude to it in the movie, of course, but it's never really super explicit. So I felt that there was something about Jim Morrison that had to exist on that level as well. And at one point, I asked Rey straight out, was Jim gay? And I remember he was drinking a beer, and he go, he did one of those kind of like movie these moments, you know, and I remember he put the beer down and he said, well, you know, he said, I think Jim was probably attracted to beauty in all its forms. And I thought, okay, fair enough. And he said, if you have a moment where, let's say, like Jim's showing up at a gig, and some gay guy comes out of the crowd and just plants a big kiss on him and stuff like that, you know, he said, that's probably cool. I think that's all right. You know, that was realistic. I thought, well, that's interesting. You know,